My father didn't ask if he could bring 30 relatives to my house for Christmas. He simply announced they were arriving. For years, I absorbed his chaos while he treated my boundaries like a joke. But when he sent a spreadsheet assigning sleeping arrangements in the home I bought myself, I didn't scream. I just packed a bag, locked the front door, and vanished before the first car pulled into the driveway. The renovation of my house in Cedar Hollow had taken 3 years of my life, a significant portion of my savings, and every ounce of patience I possessed. I had sanded the original heart pine floors on my hands and knees until my shoulders ached with a dull, throbbing rhythm that kept me awake at night. I had learned how to reglaze antique windows and how to negotiate with grumpy plumbers who thought a single woman of 33 had no business owning a structure built in 1920. But standing in my kitchen on that Tuesday afternoon in early December, watching the snow drift softly against the dark glass of the French doors, I knew it was worth it. This house was the first thing in my life that belonged entirely to me. My father, Raymond Price, had not co-signed the loan. He had not introduced me to the real estate agent. He had not offered a single cent toward the down payment, nor had he lifted a paintbrush to help cover the water stains in the guest bedroom. For the first time, I existed outside the shadow of his benevolence, which always came with a steep, invisible interest rate. I was wiping down the quartz countertop, admiring the way the gray veins caught the afternoon light, when my phone began to vibrate against the wood. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken years ago. My father in a tuxedo, holding a glass of champagne, looking like he owned the room. My stomach gave a familiar, conditioned lurch. I took a breath, steeling myself, and swiped to answer. "Hi, Dad," I said, keeping my voice light. "Gabriella!" Raymond's voice boomed through the speaker, rich and textured, the kind of voice that made strangers trust him instantly. It was a salesman's voice, warm and enveloping. "I was just telling everyone how proud I am of you. You know, I drove past Cedar Hollow the other day, and I thought, that is where the heart of this family beats now, right there in that beautiful house of yours." I leaned my hip against the counter, sensing the trap, but unable to see the mechanism yet. "That is nice of you to say. Dad, what's going on?" "Oh, nothing, he said, dismissing my question with a laugh. "Just planning. You know how I get around the holidays. I want everything to be perfect. The family has been so scattered lately. Gabriella, it breaks my heart. We need a center. We need a hearth." The word hearth made me stiffen. "I was thinking," he continued, gaining speed like a freight train coming downhill, "that we finally christen that place of yours properly. I have been coordinating with your aunts and cousins, and we have decided, this year, Christmas is at Gabriella's." I blinked, staring at the snowflakes swirling outside. "Dad, wait, it is all settled." He pushed on, ignoring me completely. "I have already told everyone to clear their calendars. We are looking at arrival on the 22nd. Now, I know you only have 3 bedrooms, but I have it all figured out. We can put the kids in the finished basement. I assume it is finished by now. And Aunt Lenora can take the study if you put a sleeper sofa in there. I will take the master, of course, just because of my back, and you can bunk with the girls in the guest room. It will be like a slumber party." "Dad, stop," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "Who is everyone?" "The whole family." "Gabriella," he said, as if I were being dense. "The cousins, the nieces, the new babies. I made a list. It is about 30 people. Give or take a few boyfriends. 30. The number hung in the quiet of my kitchen, absorbing all the oxygen. "That is not possible," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "My septic system cannot handle 30 people for a week. I have 1 functioning shower on the 2nd floor. I do not have 30 plates. Dad, you cannot just invite 30 people to my house without asking me." There was a pause on the other end, a silence that felt heavy and disappointed. "Gabriella," he said, his tone dropping an octave, becoming serious and wounded. "I have already told them. They are excited. Little Sophie has been talking about seeing your big house for weeks. Are you telling me I have to call your 7-year-old niece and tell her that her Auntie Gabriella does not want her? That you are turning family away?" He was doing it. He was pivoting instantly from the aggressor to the victim, framing my basic boundary as a personal attack on a child. "I am not turning anyone away," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my throat. "I am saying my house is not a hotel. I work until the 23rd. I cannot host a reunion of 30 people. You won't have to do a thing," he lied smoothly. "Everyone will pitch in. It will be a potluck. I am handling the organization. In fact, I just sent you the host spreadsheet. Just fill in the blanks where I marked them. Wi-Fi passwords, where the extra linens are, that sort of thing. Oh, and Cousin Mark is vegan now, so make sure the pantry is stocked for that. Dad, we are doing this. Gabriella, for me. This year is important. I need everyone together. Do not embarrass me by making a scene about this." The line clicked dead before I could respond. I stood there, the silence of the house suddenly feeling fragile. 30 people. My father, his sister Lenora, the cousins I hadn't seen in 5 years, the spouses who looked down their noses at my job in graphic design. They were coming to invade the one space I had carved out for myself. A moment later, my phone pinged. Then again, then a rapid-fire series of vibrations that rattled the device across the counter. I looked down. A new group chat had been created. Christmas at Gabriella's. The messages were pouring in. Cousin Trina. "Oh my God. Gabriella, Dad said you insisted on hosting. You are an angel. Can we get the room with the southern exposure? The baby needs natural light for his naps." Aunt Linda. "Does anyone know if there is a cat in the house? My husband is deathly allergic." Gabriella. "You will need to deep clean the carpets if there is a cat." Uncle Steve. "Looking forward to it. I will bring my famous rum punch. Hope you have a big fridge." Cousin Mike. "Hey G, is the driveway paved? I don't want to get mud on the new truck." I scrolled through the wall of text, feeling a sensation akin to drowning. They weren't asking, they were informing. My father had painted a picture of me as the gracious, eager hostess, the daughter who had finally stepped up to serve the dynasty. If I said no now, in this chat, I wouldn't just be canceling a party, I would be the villain who ruined Christmas for 30 people. My father knew exactly what he was doing. He had weaponized my own politeness against me. I set the phone down, face down, and pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes. The back door opened, letting in a gust of cold air, and I heard the familiar stomp of boots on the mudroom mat. "Hello? Are you in here?" It was Mallory Keene, my neighbor from 2 houses down. Mallory was a landscape architect with sharp eyes and a tolerance for nonsense that hovered near zero. She found me leaning against the counter, staring at the wall. She took one look at my face and dropped her canvas tote bag on the floor. "What happened?" she asked. "Who died?" "No one," I said, my voice sounding thin. "My dad is bringing 30 people here for Christmas." Mallory blinked. 30? As in 30? "Yes. And you invited them?" "No. He called me 5 minutes ago. He made a spreadsheet." Mallory walked over, picked up my phone, and flipped it over. She read the group chat notifications that were still populating the lock screen. Her eyebrows climbed higher with every second. "Gabriella," she said, putting the phone down gently as if it were a bomb. "You have to say no." "I can't," I whispered. "He already told them. If I cancel, I am the bad guy." Mallory sighed, a sound of frustration she had made many times on my behalf. "That is the point. He creates the situation where you lose either way. If you host, you are miserable and he gets the glory. If you cancel, you are the witch who hates family, and he gets to be the martyr. It is a win-win for him and a lose-lose for you." "I know," I said. "I know that. But what am I supposed to do? Call Cousin Trina and tell her I don't care about her baby's nap schedule?" Mallory went to the fridge, opened it, and took out a bottle of white wine. She poured 2 glasses without asking. "You are supposed to tell him that this is your house," she said, sliding a glass toward me. "You are 33 years old. You pay the mortgage. He does not get to occupy your territory just because he shares your DNA." I took the wine, the glass cold against my fingers. "He said he is taking the master bedroom because of his back." Mallory laughed. A sharp, barking sound. Of course he is. Let me guess. You are on the couch? Guest room with the nieces. She shook her head, taking a sip. You are a better woman than I am. If my father tried that, I would change the locks. I looked around the kitchen. The cabinets I had painted a soft dove gray. The vintage light fixtures I had scoured 3 states to find. I loved this place. I loved the silence of it. The idea of 30 people trampling through here, judging my choices, demanding food, treating me like the staff in my own home, it made my chest ache. It is not just the hosting, I said quietly. It is the way he does it. He didn't ask. He just took it. Mallory looked at me, her expression softening. Because you let him, Gab. You always let him. You absorb it. You fix it. You are the responsible one. And he eats responsible people for breakfast. Later that evening, the snow had turned to a hard, driving sleet. I was sitting on the living room rug, surrounded by folders of tax documents I was supposed to be organizing, but I wasn't looking at them. I was staring at the spreadsheet my father had emailed. It was titled, Price Family Christmas Logistics. It was color-coded. There were tabs for menu, activities, and sleeping grid. Under financial contributions, there was a column with my name at the top, and under it, the cells were merged to cover venue, utilities, and staple groceries. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the group chat. It was my brother, Evan. I picked it up immediately. Evan was 29, the baby of the family, and the only one who seemed to understand the gravity of our father's personality. Hey, I said, hey, Gab. His voice was low, like he was walking outside to talk. I saw the group chat. Yeah, are you okay? He asked. Not really, I admitted. 30 people. Evan, I know, he said. I tried to talk him down. I told him your place isn't set up for that. He wouldn't listen. He is on one this year. What does that mean? He is extra intense, Evan said. He is manic. He has been making calls for weeks, trying to get people to commit. It is like he is trying to prove something. He keeps talking about a big reveal. I think he is trying to impress someone, but I don't know who. I rubbed my temple. Great. So I am the stage for his performance. Evan was quiet for a moment. Look, Gab, I just wanted to warn you. When he gets there, just be careful. Careful of what? I don't know, Evan said, his voice dropping even lower. He has been weird about money lately, asking me about my credit limit, talking about legacy. Just don't sign anything, okay? If he puts a piece of paper in front of you, don't sign it. A chill that had nothing to do with the drafty windows went down my spine. Why would I sign anything? Just promise me. Evan said, I promise, I said. We hung up, and the silence that followed felt charged, heavy with invisible threats. I looked back at the spreadsheet on my laptop screen. The sheer entitlement of it was breathtaking, but Evan's warning had shifted my anxiety from annoyance to dread. I decided to check my email, hoping for a distraction from work. I opened my inbox and scrolled past the barrage of notifications from the group chat, which was now debating whether we should hire a caterer, with the implication that I would pay for it. One subject line caught my eye. Thank you for your continued annual commitment. The sender was Hearthlight Family Foundation. I frowned. I didn't donate to many charities, mostly because my budget was tight with the house repairs. I gave $20 a month to the local animal shelter and occasionally supported the library fund. I had never heard of Hearthlight. I clicked the email. Dear Ms. Price, on behalf of the Board of Directors, we extend our deepest gratitude for your renewed pledge to the Hearthlight Family Foundation. Your steadfast support allows us to continue our mission of community enrichment. Attached, please find the confirmation of your participation as a key benefactor for the upcoming fiscal year, as authorized by your representative. We look forward to celebrating with you at the upcoming Price Family Holiday Fundraiser. Sincerely, the Hearthlight Development Team. My heart hammered against my ribs. Price Family Holiday Fundraiser? I opened the attachment. It was a sleek, professional-looking PDF. It listed my name, Gabriella Price, and my address in Cedar Hollow, under pledge amount. The figure was redacted in the confirmation, but the status was listed as secured. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number in the email signature. It rang, and rang. Then a recorded voice came on. "Thank you for calling Hearthlight. All agents are currently busy assisting other partners." I put the phone on speaker and paced the kitchen. The hold music was a generic, tinny orchestral loop. I waited for 10 minutes, then 20. I was about to hang up when a woman finally answered. "Hearthlight Foundation. This is Sharon." "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Gabriella Price. I just received an email about a pledge, but I think there has been a mistake. I never pledged anything." "Oh, Ms. Price." Sharon's voice brightened instantly. "So good to speak with you. Your father speaks so highly of your generosity. We are all just buzzing about the event." "My father?" I asked. "Yes, Raymond. He called just yesterday to confirm the venue details. We have you down for the full hospitality package. It is really such a lovely thing you are doing. Opening your home like this, venue details." The room seemed to tilt. This wasn't just a family reunion. I am sorry." I stammered. "What event are you talking about?" "The fundraiser," Sharon said, her tone faltering slightly, confused by my confusion. "The holiday home tour and gala? It is the centerpiece of our winter drive. Raymond said the invitations went out last week." I felt the blood drain from my face. I needed to get off the phone. I needed to think. "Right," I said, my voice sounding hollow. I have to go." I hung up before she could say anything else. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. My father wasn't just bringing the family to my house. He was hosting a charity gala at my house. He was selling tickets to my living room. Why? Why would he do that? I walked over to the antique secretary desk in the corner of the living room. It was where I kept my important papers. I pulled out the bottom drawer, where I shoved the things I didn't want to deal with: receipts from past family trips, old bank statements, IOUs from my dad that were written on napkins and never mentioned again. I grabbed a folder labeled Holidays and dumped it onto the floor. I started sorting. Here was the receipt from 3 years ago, when we went to the cabin in Vermont. Dad had booked it, but his card wasn't working at check-in, so I put it on mine. $2,400. He had paid me back $400. Here was the grocery bill from Thanksgiving last year. $600. I had shopped, cooked, and cleaned. Dad had brought a bottle of wine. Here was the invoice for the car rental when his transmission blew 2 Christmases ago. $900. I pulled out a calculator. My hands were trembling. I went back 5 years. I added up the plane tickets I bought for cousins who couldn't afford it, the small loans to my dad for business ventures that never materialized, the deposits, the dinners where he loudly ordered appetizers for the table, and then silently slid the check toward me when the waiter came. The number on the calculator screen grew. 5,000, 12,000, 18,000. I stared at the final sum. $24,350. That was the cost of being a Price. That was the price of admission to my own family. I had been paying a subscription fee to be treated like a doormat. And now, he wasn't just asking for money. He was selling my sanctuary. He was leveraging my home, the only thing I truly owned, to play the big shot for a charity I didn't know, to impress people I didn't care about. He hadn't asked because he knew I would say no. He had engineered a situation where saying no would destroy his reputation, counting on the fact that I loved him too much, or feared him too much, to pull the trigger. He was banking on my silence. He was banking on the fact that Gabriella always makes it work. Gabriella always fixes it. I looked at the group chat on my phone, which was now lighting up with a debate about where to put the Christmas tree. Cousin Trina. It has to go in the bay window. Does Gabriella have a 12-foot ladder? I looked at the photo of my dad on the wall, the one where he looked like a hero. I didn't feel angry. That was the strangest part. I expected rage, hot and fiery, but what I felt was cold. It was a freezing, crystalline clarity. I wasn't going to fight him. I wasn't going to scream at him in the driveway while the cousins watched. I wasn't going to try to cancel the event and look like the hysterical daughter ruining charity. I stood up. I walked to the calendar on the wall. The dates for Christmas week were marked in red marker. I picked up the marker and drew a line through them. I wasn't going to be there. If he wanted to host a party at Gabriella's house, he could. But he was going to have to do it without Gabriella, and he was going to have to explain why the host was missing, why the fridge was empty, why the linens were locked away, and why the venue was nothing but a cold, dark building. I walked to my laptop and opened a new browser tab. I didn't search for recipes or cleaning services. I searched for vacation rentals, Maine, remote. I was going to vanish, and I was going to leave the truth behind me, buried like landmines, waiting for them to step. I scrolled until I found a small cottage in Harbor Pike. It was small. It had a fireplace. It had no room for 30 people. I clicked Book Now. Then I went to the spreadsheet my father had sent. I didn't fill in the Wi-Fi password. I didn't fill in the linen locations. I closed the laptop. Let them come. I whispered to the empty room. Let them see what happens when the staff quits. The house seemed to settle around me, as if it agreed. This was my home, and the only way to keep it was to leave it. I turned off the lights in the kitchen, leaving only the glow of the street lamp outside reflecting off the snow. It was going to be a silent night, indeed, just not the one Raymond Price was expecting. The art of disappearing requires more than just absence. It requires the meticulous construction of a void. If I simply ran away, my father would spin it as a tantrum. He would tell the relatives I was overwhelmed, that I had snapped under the pressure of my own incompetence, and he would play the hero who stepped in to save Christmas, to truly win. I had to be a ghost. I had to be nowhere and everywhere at once. The first step was my job. I worked as a senior graphic designer for a boutique firm in Boston, a job my father often referred to as my little art projects. I emailed my creative director, Sarah, on Wednesday morning. I told her I had a family emergency that required me to be out of the state, but that I would be working remotely and handling all my deliverables from a secure location. Sarah, who knew enough about my family to understand that emergency usually meant Raymond, approved it within 10 minutes. Next came the location. I couldn't go to a hotel in Cedar Hollow. Someone would spot my car. I couldn't go to Boston. It was too close. I needed distance, and I needed silence. I logged into a travel rewards account my father didn't know existed. For years, I had funneled all my business expenses through a specific credit card, racking up points that I hoarded like dragon's gold. Raymond knew about my primary bank account. He had helped me open it when I was 16 and likely still knew the security questions. But this account was mine. I found a rental in Harbor Pike, Maine. It was a small, shingled cottage on a rocky bluff, overlooking a gray, churning Atlantic. The listing promised spotty cell service and a fireplace. It was perfect. I booked it under the name G, price for 7 nights, starting the 22nd of December. The confirmation number felt like a secret code, a key to a cell I was building for myself. But before I could leave, I needed armor. I made an appointment with Diana Sloan. Diana was a general practice attorney in town, a woman with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and a reputation for terrifying the local zoning board. She wasn't a family friend. That was why I chose her. I sat in her office on Thursday afternoon, the leather chair squeaking beneath me. The room smelled of old paper and peppermint tea. I slid the printed email from the Hearthlight Family Foundation across her mahogany desk. Diana put on her reading glasses, the chain clinking softly against her necklace. She read in silence. I watched her eyes scan the text, then stop. She frowned. She read it again. "This is unusual," Diana said, her voice dry and professional. "Unusual how?" I asked. She took a red pen and circled 3 words. "Commitment, authorized, representative, Gabriella," she said, looking over her glasses. In the world of charitable giving, these words have weight. Commitment implies a contract. Authorized representative implies you gave someone power of attorney or explicit permission to pledge on your behalf. Did you? No. I said, I have never even spoken to these people until yesterday. Diana tapped the paper. And this amount here, the redaction covers the specific figure in the email body, but down here, in the fine print footer, it references a Tier 3 donor status for Hearthlight, based on their public donor tiers. That is usually a minimum of $5,000. My stomach dropped. $5,000. It gets stickier. Diana continued. If they are sending you a confirmation of a pledge, it means they believe the money is already secured. Charities do not usually thank you for a continued commitment unless they have a card on file or a signed promissory note. My father, I said, the realization tasting like ash in my mouth. He told them I was the host. He must have told them I was covering the costs. Diana leaned back. It is one thing to volunteer your house for a party. It is another to pledge a donation in someone else's name. But what concerns me more is the context. Why does a family Christmas need a charitable foundation? I don't know, I admitted. Diana made a note on her legal pad. I want you to do something for me. Tonight. Check your credit report. All 3 bureaus. If your father is making pledges in your name, we need to make sure he isn't backing them up with your credit history. I walked out of her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I wasn't crazy. Heavier because the reality was worse than I thought. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. The house was quiet. The wind rattling the sash windows I had restored last summer. I logged into the credit monitoring site. My fingers were cold. I clicked Generate Report. The loading wheel spun for an agonizing 10 seconds. The report populated. I scrolled past the student loans I'd paid off, the car lease, the mortgage. Then I saw it. Inquiries. Last 30 days. One source. Northcrest Lending Services. Date. December 10th. I stared at the screen. December 10th. That was 3 days ago. That was the day before Raymond called me. I Googled Northcrest Lending Services. They specialized in short-term bridge loans and home equity lines of credit. My breath hitched. A hard inquiry meant someone had applied for credit using my social security number. Not just asked about rates, applied. Panic flared in my chest. Hot and blinding, I stood up and paced the kitchen. He tried to take out a loan. He tried to take out a loan in my name. I reached for the phone to call him. My thumb hovered over his contact photo. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hear him deny it so I could catch him in the lie. I wanted to blow the whole thing up right now. Just, don't sign anything. Evan's voice echoed in my head. If I called him now, he would spin it. He would say it was a mistake, a clerical error, or worse, he would gaslight me into thinking I had discussed it with him months ago. Don't you remember? Gabriella? We talked about leveraging the equity for the family trust. No. I put the phone down. If I confronted him now, he would cover his tracks. He would cancel the application, blame the bank, and still show up on Christmas with 30 people, playing the victim. I needed to be methodical. I sat back down. I printed the credit report. I put it in the folder with the Hearthlight email. I wasn't dealing with a father anymore. I was dealing with an identity thief who happened to be my father. The next morning, Friday, I called Mallory. I need help. I said when she answered, I'll be there in 5. She replied. Mallory arrived with a toolbox and a look of grim determination. I told her about the credit inquiry. She didn't look surprised, which somehow made it hurt more. Okay, she said. We are locking this place down. If he thinks he owns this house, we need to remind him physically that he doesn't. We spent the morning installing a new security system. It wasn't anything fancy, just a high-definition video doorbell and 2 floodlight cameras for the backyard, all linked to an app on my phone. Then came the locks. I had given my father a spare key 3 years ago. For emergencies, I knew he still had it on his keychain, right next to the fob for his Mercedes. Mallory held up a fresh deadbolt kit. You know this is going to start a war, right? When he puts his key in the door and it doesn't turn? Let it, I said. I want him to stand on that porch and realize he's locked out. I want him to feel it. We changed the locks on the front door, the back door, and even the door leading from the garage. When we were done, I tested the new key. The bolt slid home with a satisfying, heavy thunk. It sounded like a gavel coming down. It is not just about keeping them out, I told Mallory as we stood in the driveway. Looking at the house, it is about the occupation. If 30 people get in there, they will destroy it. They will eat everything, break things, and leave me with the mess. They treat my home like it is a resource to be mined. Mallory squeezed my shoulder. It is a fortress now. Gab, you are the captain. I didn't feel like a captain. I felt like a fugitive. Later that afternoon, I called Evan again. I needed to know the scale of what I was walking away from. He answered on the first ring. Gab, did you talk to him? No. I said, I am keeping my head down. But Evan, you need to tell me exactly what he is saying to people. Evan sighed. The background noise sounded like a coffee shop. He is telling everyone that this is the year the Price family gets back on the map. He keeps using that phrase. Back on the map. What map? I asked. We aren't lost. We are just middle class. He is bragging about a big announcement. Evan said. He told Uncle Steve that by New Year's, he is going to launch a new venture. And he keeps saying, you are finally doing your part. My part. The words made my skin crawl. He says you have stepped up. Evan continued. He told the cousins you insisted on hosting because you wanted to give back to the family that made you who you are. I closed my eyes. He was rewriting history in real time. He was painting a portrait of a grateful, submissive daughter to cover up the fact that he was stealing her identity. Evan, listen to me. I said, I need you to do something. When you guys come down, just watch him. Watch who he talks to. Watch if he tries to sign anything. Why? Evan asked, his voice tightening. What did you find? I can't tell you yet. I said, I don't want to put you in the middle more than you already are. Just be careful. I hung up and stared at the phone. A text message popped up. It was from my cousin Trina. Trina. Hey, so excited for next week. Quick question. Aunt Lenora said something about you donating the house for the fundraiser weekend. Is that true? That is so generous. I didn't know you were doing that well. My blood ran cold. Donating the house, not hosting. Donating, I typed back, my fingers flying. What do you mean, donating? Trina's reply came instantly. 3 dancing dots followed by, oh, just that the house is part of the auction or something? Or maybe the venue for the tour? I don't know. Raymond was vague, but he said the house is the primary gift for the Hearthlight Drive. Anyway, see you soon. The primary gift. I grabbed my coat. I needed to go to the town hall. Cedar Hollow was a small town, the kind where the clerks knew your grandmother's maiden name. I walked into the event permitting office at 3 o'clock. The clerk, Mrs. Higgins, smiled when she saw me. Gabriella, she chirped, we are all so excited about the tour. Your father was in here on Monday. Such a charmer. My father was here? I asked, leaning against the counter to steady myself. Oh yes, he filed the special event permit for the residential thoroughfare. You know, for the parking? Since you are expecting so much traffic for the home tour. I swallowed hard. Can I see the file? Mrs. Higgins? I just want to double-check the dates. Of course, dear. She bustled over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a manila folder. She slid it across the counter. I opened it. There it was. An application for a charitable holiday home tour stop. The applicant was listed as Raymond Price. I flipped to the second page. There were photos, professional photos. I stared at them in horror. There was my living room, staged with a fire in the grate. There was my kitchen, with a bowl of lemons that I didn't own on the counter. There was my bedroom. He had been in my house. He must have come over 2 weeks ago, when I was at work. Using the spare key I hadn't changed yet, he had let himself in, staged my home, photographed it, and submitted it to the town. And there, at the bottom of the application, was the signature line, Homeowner Consent. It was signed in a looping, confident scrawl, Raymond Price, on behalf of Gabriella Price. He hadn't even forged my name. He had signed his own, declaring himself my proxy, as if I were a child, as if I were property. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. It wasn't grief anymore. It was fury. It was a cold, hard rage that solidified in my gut like concrete. He wasn't just being pushy. He was strategically converting my life into a family asset. He looked at my floors, my walls, my sanctuary, and he saw collateral. He saw a stage for his ego and a bank account for his debts. Is everything all right? Gabriella? Mrs. Higgins asked, concerned. I looked up. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Yes, everything is fine. I forgot how much work he put into this. I took a picture of the application with my phone, every page, including the signature. Thank you, Mrs. Higgins, I said. I walked out of the town hall and into the biting cold. The holiday lights on Main Street were twinkling, mocking me with their cheer. I called Diana Sloan from the car. Draft it, I said. Gabriella? Draft the cease and desist, I said, and a revocation of authorization. I want a document that says Raymond Price has no legal standing to represent me, my property, or my finances. Good, Diana said. I will have it ready for you to sign in the morning. Do you want me to serve him immediately? I paused. If I served him now, he would have 3 days to spin a new lie. He would cancel the event, blame the town bureaucracy, and tell the family I was having a breakdown. He would escape the humiliation. No, I said, do not send it yet. Keep it in the chamber. Are you sure? Diana asked. If he moves forward with this loan, he can't close the loan without me there to sign the final papers. I said, Northcrest will need wet ink from the homeowner. He is counting on bullying me into signing it on Christmas Eve. So what is the plan? I am going to let him set the stage. I said, I am going to let him invite everyone. I am going to let him promise them the world. And then I am going to let him stand in front of a locked door and explain why he lied. I hung up. I drove home. The house looked different now. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a trap. I went inside and started packing. But I wasn't packing clothes. I went room by room. I took down the framed photos of my friends. I took down the watercolor painting I had bought in Paris. I took the letters from my grandmother out of the desk drawer. I stripped the house of me. If Raymond wanted a venue, I would give him a venue. I would give him a hollow shell. I removed the sentimental items not out of spite, but because I couldn't bear the thought of them being props in his play. I didn't want Cousin Trina critiquing my art. I didn't want Aunt Lenora reading my postcards. I packed the heirlooms into plastic bins and carried them to the attic, locking the door behind me. I stripped the beds and locked the linens in the master closet. I cleared the bathroom counters. The house began to echo. It felt cold, impersonal, like a model home. When I was finished, the living room was bare except for the furniture. The mantel was empty. I reached into one of the bins and pulled out a single item. It was a small, silver-framed photograph. It was taken 25 years ago. I was 8 years old, sitting on my father's shoulders. We were at a carnival. I was laughing, holding a stick of cotton candy, and he was looking up at me with a smile that looked like love. It was the only proof I had that he had ever seen me as a daughter, not an investment. I placed the photo on the center of the empty mantel. I wanted him to see it. When he broke into the house, and I knew he would try, I wanted this to be the first thing he saw. I wanted him to look at that smiling little girl and realize that he was the one who had erased her. I packed my suitcase for Maine. I put the new keys in my pocket. I checked the camera feed on my phone. The image was crisp and clear. I was ready. I walked out the front door and locked it. I didn't look back. I got into my car and drove north, toward the gray ocean and the silence, leaving the trap set and waiting for the prey to arrive. The cottage in Harbor Pike was exactly what I needed, a structure built to withstand a gale. The wind off the Atlantic battered the shingles with a relentless, rhythmic thrumming that made the silence inside feel heavy and earned. I had spent the first 24 hours doing absolutely nothing. I watched the gray waves crash against the granite rocks. I drank tea. I did not check my email. I did not log into social media. I existed in a suspended state of waiting, like a soldier in a trench checking her watch, knowing exactly when the artillery would begin. It started on December 22nd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sitting in the oversized armchair by the fireplace, a book open on my lap that I wasn't reading, when my phone buzzed on the side table. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from the security app I had installed with Mallory just days before. Motion detected. Front porch. My heart gave a violent kick against my ribs. This was it. I picked up the phone and opened the app. The screen loaded, the little buffering circle spinning for a second before the feed snapped into crisp, high-definition focus. There he was. Raymond Price had arrived early. He had parked his silver Mercedes in my driveway, blocking the garage door, claiming the space as if he had the deed in his glove box. He stepped out of the car, looking every inch the benevolent patriarch. He was wearing a camel hair coat that I knew cost more than my first car, a red cashmere scarf draped artfully around his neck, and leather driving gloves. He looked like he was shooting a catalog cover for a lifestyle brand called Affluence, but he wasn't alone. A second car, a sensible minivan, pulled in behind him. That would be Aunt Lenora and Uncle Steve. Then a third car, a flashy SUV that belonged to Cousin Mike. I watched as the setup crew spilled out onto my driveway. There were 8 of them in total. They were laughing, chatting, stretching their legs after the drive. Cousin Trina was already holding a clipboard. They looked happy. They looked like a family arriving home. I felt a sharp, twisting pain in my gut. It was a physical ache, a mourning for the version of this scene where I was standing in the doorway with a tray of hot cocoa, happy to see them. I wanted that. I had always wanted that. But I knew the cost of that fantasy was my own erasure. On the screen, my father walked up the front steps with a confident bounce in his stride. He waved at Trina, pointing to the flower beds as if directing a landscaping crew. He reached the front door. I zoomed in on the feed. He didn't knock. Of course he didn't knock. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key ring. He selected the brass key I had given him 3 years ago, the one I had revoked in spirit long before I revoked it in metal. He slid the key into the lock. He tried to turn it. On the video, I saw his shoulder dip as he applied pressure. Then he stopped. He jiggled the key. He pulled it out, looked at it, wiped it on his coat, and put it back in. He tried again, harder this time. The door didn't budge. He frowned, a crack appearing in his performance. He leaned back and looked at the house number, as if checking he was at the right address. Then he rang the doorbell. Ding dong. The chime echoed in my empty house in Cedar Hollow, 700 miles away from where I sat in Maine. He waited. He rang it again and again. Gabriella? I heard his voice through the camera's microphone. It was tinny but clear. Gabriella. Open up. It is Dad. The key is sticking. He turned to the group in the driveway. She must be in the shower, he announced loudly, smiling. You know how she is. Probably deep cleaning the bathroom. Trina laughed. Typical Gabriella. Always perfect. He tried the door again. He rattled the handle. He knocked with the heavy brass knocker. 5 minutes passed. The smiles in the driveway were starting to fade. Uncle Steve was blowing into his hands to keep warm. Aunt Lenora was looking at the second-floor windows, her brow furrowed. Raymond was losing his composure. He pulled out his phone. My phone in Maine began to ring. Incoming call. Dad, I let it ring. It went to voicemail. He called again immediately, and again, and again. 15 calls in 4 minutes. I watched him on the screen, pacing the length of my porch. His face was flushing a deep, angry red. He was stabbing at his phone screen with his gloved finger. He wasn't the benevolent patriarch anymore. He was a man who had pulled a lever and found the machine unresponsive. The group in the driveway was getting restless. Cousin Mike walked up the steps. What is going on? Ray? Mike asked. Is she not home? She is home, Raymond snapped. Her car is... He stopped. He looked at the driveway. My car wasn't there. I had parked it in a long-term lot at the airport and taken a rental to Maine to avoid exactly this realization. She must have gone to the store, Raymond said, recovering quickly. Last-minute groceries. She knew we were coming early to set up. He lied so easily. He hadn't told me he was coming early. He had just assumed the house was available to him whenever he chose to occupy it. I took a deep breath. It was time. I opened the family group chat. It was filled with on our way emojis and photos of gas station snacks. I typed a single message. I didn't offer an excuse. I didn't say I was sick. I didn't say I was sorry. I just typed the truth. I am unavailable to host. Please make other plans. I hit send. On the video screen. The reaction was instantaneous. A ripple went through the group in the driveway as phones began to ping and vibrate in pockets and purses. Trina looked at her phone first. Her jaw dropped. "What?" she shrieked. Aunt Lenora pulled her phone out of her bag. She read the message and put a hand over her mouth. Uncle Steve looked at his phone, then looked up at Raymond on the porch. "Ray?" Raymond was staring at his own screen. I saw the color drain from his face, leaving it a sallow, waxen gray. He looked up at the camera, not knowing he was looking at me, but looking at the house that had just rejected him. "What did she say?" Raymond demanded, though he had the text right in front of him. "She says she is unavailable," Trina said, her voice rising in pitch. "She says make other plans. Ray, you said this was a done deal. You said she was prepping the guest rooms. She is joking," Raymond said, a desperate laugh bubbling up. "It is a joke. Gabriella has a weird sense of humor sometimes." He pounded on the door. "Gabriella, open this door right now. This isn't funny. We have the whole family coming." I watched him hammer his fist against the wood. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a nature documentary about a predator that had missed its kill. "She isn't in there." "Ray," Uncle Steve said, his voice hard. "The house is dark. There is no smoke in the chimney." Raymond spun around. "Do not take that tone with me. Steve, she is inside. She is just being difficult. She is having a moment. I will handle this." He pulled out his phone again and dialed a number. I could hear him through the camera. "Yes, I need a locksmith. Immediately. I am locked out of my daughter's house. It is an emergency. We have elderly relatives in the cold." "Yes, Cedar Hollow." I sat up straighter. He was going to break in. He was actually going to force the lock. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I waited. 10 minutes later, a white van with Cedar Hollow lock key stenciled on the side pulled up. A burly man in a blue jumpsuit hopped out. Raymond rushed down the steps to meet him. "Thank God you are here. My daughter changed the locks and forgot to give me the new key. We are freezing out here." The locksmith looked at the house, then at Raymond. He looked at the group of confused, shivering relatives standing by the minivan. "Okay," the locksmith said. "I can get you in. I just need to see some ID and proof of residence, or the homeowner needs to be present to authorize it." "I am her father," Raymond said, puffing out his chest. "Okay," the locksmith said calmly. "But is your name on the deed? Is your address on your license this address?" "No." "But then I can't open the door, sir. State law. I can't just drill a lock because you say you are related to the owner." Raymond's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. "Do you know who I am? I am Raymond Price. I am organizing the charity tour on this street. I have 30 people arriving in 2 days. Open the damn door." The locksmith took a step back, his hand instinctively moving to his belt. "Sir, you need to lower your voice. I am not opening this house without the owner's permission. If you don't back off, I am leaving." "Call her," Raymond screamed. "Call Gabriella. Tell her to tell you." "She isn't answering," Trina piped up from the driveway, her voice trembling. She turned her phone off. Raymond kicked the tire of the locksmith's van, a dull, thudding sound that echoed in the cold air. The locksmith didn't say another word. He got back in his van, locked the door, and reversed out of the driveway. Raymond stood there, panting, his breath coming in white clouds of rage. For the first time in my life, I saw the relatives look at him not with admiration, but with fear and embarrassment. Uncle Steve stepped forward. "Ray, you lied to us." "I didn't lie," Raymond shouted, spinning on him. "She agreed to this. She is sabotaging me. She is doing this on purpose to humiliate me." "You said you had the keys," Lenora said quietly. You said you had been here all week setting up. You sent us photos of the interior. I did, Raymond stammered. I was here. She must have changed the locks yesterday. She is unstable. Lenora, I told you she has been under a lot of stress. He was pivoting. He was trying to construct the narrative of the crazy daughter to cover the reality of the lying father. Trina, who was shivering violently in her stylish but thin coat, interrupted. I don't care about the drama. I care that it is 20 degrees and I have to pee. Where are we staying? Raymond looked wild-eyed. Here, we are staying here. I will get in. I will break a window if I have to. No, you will not. Uncle Steve said. You are not breaking a window in my niece's house. We need a hotel. Trina was already on her phone. I am checking the Marriott in Briar Glen. It is the only place with rooms left. She tapped the screen, her face falling. Oh my God. What? Mike asked. It is $350 a night, Trina said, and they have a 3-night minimum because of the holiday. And, she scrolled down. We need 5 rooms. That is over $5,000 just for the deposit. The group went silent. $5,000 was a lot of money to this crowd. Raymond, Steve said, you need to fix this. Raymond patted his pockets, looking for a wallet that I knew was likely full of maxed-out cards. Right. Yes. Of course. I will handle it. My business card is having some issues with the fraud alert system because of all the holiday spending. He turned to the back of the group, where my brother Evan had been standing silently, leaning against his car. Evan, Raymond said, his voice taking on that oily, persuasive tone I knew so well. Evan, son, let me use your card for the deposit. I will wire you the cash on Monday when the bank opens. You know how these things are. I watched Evan on the screen. He looked tired. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. He looked at our father, then at the house where I was supposed to be. He must have remembered what I said. Just don't sign anything. I can't, Dad, Evan said. What do you mean you can't? Raymond asked, his smile tightening. It is just a hold. I will pay it off before it even posts. I am not doing it, Evan said, his voice louder this time. I am not putting $5,000 on my card. You said this was covered. You said Gabriella was hosting for free. I am good for it, Raymond shouted, losing his temper again. Why is everyone treating me like a criminal? I am trying to give this family a perfect Christmas. You are trying to make us pay for it, Evan said. The silence that followed was excruciating. It was the sound of a dynamic breaking. Evan, the peacekeeper, the quiet one, had drawn a line. Fine, Raymond spat. Fine. If you all want to abandon me, go ahead. I will figure this out. I always figure it out. Trina didn't wait. She got in her car. I am going to the motel on Route 9. She yelled out the window. It is a dump, but it has heat, one by one. The cars started to turn around. The setup crew was retreating. Raymond was left alone in the driveway. He stood there for a long time, staring at my front door. He looked smaller than usual. The wind whipped his cashmere scarf around his face. He looked at the camera lens. He must have noticed the new device by now. And he sneered. You will pay for this, Gabriella, he muttered. He got in his Mercedes and drove away. I sat in the cottage in Maine, staring at the empty driveway on my screen. My hands were shaking. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel the rush of victory I had expected. I felt a hollow, aching grief. I had wanted him to stop. I had wanted him to respect me. I hadn't wanted to humiliate him. But I realized now that for a man like Raymond, there was no difference. To be bounded was to be humiliated. To be told no was to be destroyed. I closed the app. I needed tea. I needed to warm up, even though the cottage was 70 degrees. My phone rang again. I braced myself for another assault from Raymond. But the caller ID said Cedar Hollowtown offices. I frowned. It was 4:30 on Friday. They were closing for the holiday. I answered. Hello? Ms. Price? This is Janice from the event planning board. Yes. Hi, Janice. I am so sorry to bother you so late, Janice said, sounding flustered. But we have a bit of a situation. The logistics coordinator for the holiday home tour is trying to reach your father to drop off the signage for the lawn. You know, the tour stop markers and the parking cones, but he isn't answering. Signage, parking cones. I took a deep breath. Janice, I said clearly, there is no tour stop at my house. There was a pause. Excuse me? I did not authorize my home to be part of the holiday home tour. I said, I am not in Cedar Hollow. The house is locked. There will be no event. But, Janice stammered, we have the application right here. It is signed. We have already printed the maps. The tickets are sold. I felt that cold fury rise again. Janice, I need you to listen to me. I did not sign that application. My father submitted it without my consent. Oh dear, Janice whispered. I need you to look at the signature on that file. I said, is it my name? Or is it Raymond Price signing for me? I heard papers shuffling. It says Raymond Price, acting as proxy. I never appointed him proxy. I said, that document is fraudulent. I have my attorney, Diana Sloan, drafting a formal cease and desist. But I'm telling you right now, verbally, if anyone sets foot on my property for a tour, I will consider it trespassing. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the sound of Janice typing furiously. Ms. Price, I am so sorry, she said, her voice shifting from confused to official. If that is the case, we have to pull the stop immediately. We cannot have a liability issue like this. Please do. I said, I will notify the committee. We will have to send out an email blast to the ticket holders tonight. We will have to refund the portion of the ticket price. Oh my. This is going to be quite a mess. I am sorry for the trouble. Janice, I said genuinely, I know this isn't your fault. It certainly isn't yours. Dear, she said, I will cancel it now. I hung up. The second domino had fallen. First, the family reunion. Now, the public gala. Raymond wasn't just losing a place to sleep. He was losing his audience. He was losing the legitimacy he had tried to manufacture using my address. When that email blast went out, the Price residence has been removed from the tour due to unauthorized submission. The entire town would know. The Hearthlight Foundation would know. He would be radioactive. I went to the kitchen to boil water. I felt like I was moving through molasses. My phone pinged with a text from Mallory. Mallory, you watching this? Me. Just saw the driveway show. Mallory. He is at the coffee shop on Main Street now. I am in line behind him. He is on the phone with Aunt Lenora. Me. What is he saying? Mallory. He is spinning. Gab. He is telling her you are having a breakdown. He is saying you went off your meds. Do you even take meds? And that you are in a crisis center. He is trying to make it sound like he is the victim of your mental instability. I gripped the counter. Of course. That was the only card he had left. If I wasn't evil, I had to be crazy. Because if I was sane and reasonable, then he was a monster. Me. Don't say anything. Let him talk. Mallory. Too late. I already intervened. I stared at the screen. What? Mallory. I walked up to him while he was loud talking about your episode. I told him, loudly, that I saw you yesterday and you were perfectly fine. I told him you were just done with his mooching. Me. Mal. You didn't? Mallory. I did. I said, she isn't sick. Ray. She just changed the locks because you tried to steal her house. Me. Oh my God. Mallory. The whole coffee shop went quiet. He turned beet red and left. He forgot his latte. I put the phone down and put my face in my hands. I laughed. It was a jagged, wet sound. I imagined Raymond, the king of Cedar Hollow, fleeing a coffee shop because a landscape architect called him out on his grift. The facade wasn't just cracking, it was shattering. But as night fell over the ocean outside and the wind howled around the corners of my cottage, I knew it wasn't over. Raymond Price was like a trapped animal. He had been humiliated in front of his family, blocked by the town, and exposed in public. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him dangerous. I checked the security feed one last time. The house was dark. The driveway was empty. But in the darkness, The little red light of the camera blinked, a single unblinking eye watching for the monster to return. I went to my bag and pulled out the legal folder Diana had given me. I reviewed the documents, the cease and desist, the revocation of authorization. I had the weapons. I just hoped I wouldn't have to use them all. But as I lay in the strange bed in Harbor Pike, listening to the ocean, I had a feeling that Christmas Eve was going to be a battle. Raymond wouldn't let the holiday pass without trying to reclaim the narrative. He would come back. And he would bring the chaos with him. I closed my eyes, but sleep was a long time coming. I kept seeing the image of my father's face when the key didn't turn, the shock of a man who discovers, for the first time, that the world does not exist solely to serve him. The morning after the lockout, the sun rose over Harbor Pike in a wash of pale, bruised purple. The wind had died down, leaving the ocean dangerously calm, a flat sheet of steel stretching to the horizon. Inside the cottage, the silence felt different. It wasn't the peaceful silence of solitude anymore. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a phone that was about to ring with bad news. I had slept in fitful, jagged bursts, waking up every hour to check the security feed. The house in Cedar Hollow remained dark and undisturbed, a fortress holding its breath. But I knew the real siege wasn't happening at my front door. It was happening in the group chats, in the hotel lobbies, and in the whispered conversations between relatives who were suddenly realizing that their holiday patriarch had no kingdom. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. I expected it to be Raymond, screaming about the cold, or Trina, demanding a refund for the motel. But the name on the screen was Aunt Lenora. My stomach tightened. Lenora was Raymond's older sister, a woman who had spent her life smoothing over the rough edges of the Price family history. She was the one who whispered hush when voices were raised. She was the one who slipped $20 bills into my hand when my father forgot my birthday. She was the keeper of the peace, which usually meant she was the keeper of the secrets. I answered, bracing myself for a lecture on duty and forgiveness. "Hello." "Aunt Lenora," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Gabriella?" Her voice sounded thin, cracked, like something that had been dropped and glued back together poorly. "I am here," I said. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear the hum of a hotel vending machine in the background. "Did he do it again?" she asked. The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. She didn't ask, "Where are you?" or "Why did you lock us out?" She asked if he had done it again. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Do what?" "Lenora, did he make you sign something?" she whispered. "Did he make you put your name on a loan?" "No," I said. "He tried, but I caught it in time." I heard her let out a breath that sounded like a sob. "Thank God. Oh, thank God." "Lenora," I said, my grip on the phone tightening. "Why are you asking me that?" I need to tell you something," she said. "I should have told you 10 years ago. I should have told you when you bought that house, but I was so ashamed. Gabriella, and he makes you feel like it is your fault, like you are the one who misunderstood." "Tell me what?" 20 years ago, she said. "Do you remember the Christmas we went to Aspen?" "You were 13. I remembered. It was the year Raymond had announced that the Price family was going up in the world. We stayed in a massive chalet. There were catered dinners. It was the most magical week of my childhood, mostly because my father seemed happy, stress-free, and generous. "Yes," I said, "that trip wasn't paid for by his bonus." Lenora said, "He didn't have a bonus that year. He had been fired in November." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Maine winter. "Then how did we afford it?" "He came to me," Lenora said. "He told me he had a liquidity issue, just a short-term cash flow problem. He needed a bridge loan to cover the deposit on the chalet and the flights. He showed me papers. He said he had a settlement coming in January. He begged me, Gabriella. He cried. He said he couldn't bear to disappoint you and Evan. He said Christmas was all you kids had." I closed my eyes. I could hear him saying it. I could hear the exact cadence of his manipulation. "I co-signed," Lenora said, her voice trembling. "It was a personal loan, $30,000. He promised he would pay it off in 6 weeks. And, I asked, though I knew the answer. He paid 2 months, she said. Then he stopped. The lenders came after me. They garnished my wages. Gabriella, I was a school librarian. I didn't have $30,000. I lost my savings. I had to sell my mother's jewelry. Lenora. When I confronted him, she continued, the bitterness finally leaking through the sorrow. He told the family I was jealous of his success. He told our parents I was bad with money. He spun it so fast I got dizzy. And because I was embarrassed that I had been so stupid, I let him do it. I just wanted it to go away. She began to weep softly. I am so sorry, Gabriella. I saw him doing the same thing this week. The way he was talking about the perfect Christmas. The way he was flashing his credit card, but asking Evan to cover the tips. I knew in my gut he was looking for a new host, a new wallet. I listened to her cry, and my anger at her silence softened into a profound pity. She was a victim, just like me. The only difference was that she had been trained to protect the predator. Lenora, I said gently, you don't have to apologize, but I need you to help me now. I will, she said, sniffing. Anything. I need you to tell me about the Hearthlight Family Foundation. The line went quiet again. Hearthlight? Yes, I said. Raymond pledged a donation in my name to them. He organized a fundraiser at my house. Do you know them? Lenora let out a dry, humorless laugh. Oh, I know them. That isn't a charity. Gabriella. That is a shield. What do you mean? Raymond has been on the advisory board of Hearthlight for 5 years. She said, it is run by his old friend from college, Cal Weller. Cal Weller. The name sounded familiar. They use it for networking, Lenora said carefully. They throw parties. They collect donations. But I never saw them actually do anything. I never saw them build a house or feed a child. Raymond calls it strategic philanthropy. He uses it to meet people with money, people he can pitch his business ideas to. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Strategic philanthropy. I opened my laptop. I needed Diana Sloan. I called her office, and she picked up on the second ring. Diana, I said, we need to look at the tax filings for the Hearthlight Family Foundation. I am already on it, Diana said, her voice sharp and efficient. I pulled their Form 990s from the public database after you called me yesterday, Gabriella. This is messy. Tell me. I said, it is a registered 501c3, Diana said. So it is technically legal. But look at the expense ratios. I heard the rustle of paper. They raised $400,000 last year. Diana read, a decent amount. But listen to where it went. $150,000 to administrative expenses. That is 37% overhead. That is incredibly high. Most reputable charities are under 15%. Where did the rest go? I asked. There are grants listed to various small community groups, Diana said. But there is a line item here for consulting services. $100,000 paid to a firm called PriceBridge Strategies. My heart stopped. PriceBridge. Price. Bridge. That is him. I said, that is my father. Does he have a consulting firm? Diana asked. He has 100 firms, I said. He registers LLCs like other people buy lottery tickets. If he is on the board and he is receiving payments for consulting. That is a conflict of interest unless it was disclosed and voted on, Diana said. But here's the kicker. The address for PriceBridge Strategies? It is a P.O. box in Briar Glen, the same P.O. box listed for the Holiday Home Tour return address. I stared at the wall of the cottage, seeing the entire web come into focus. The perfect Christmas wasn't just about his ego. It was a money laundering operation. He wasn't just bringing the family to my house to celebrate. He was bringing donors. He was bringing the Hearthlight crowd. He was going to use my home, my renovated, historic, beautiful home, as the stage to prove his solvency. He needed to look successful to attract the donations. And then, those donations would be funneled into PriceBridge Strategies as consulting fees, straight into his pocket. And the loan? The loan from Northcrest? If he could show Northcrest that he had a successful fundraising event, that he was a community leader with assets. My house, which he claimed to represent. They would approve the line of credit. He was using my house as collateral for a loan, and using the party to generate the cash flow to pay the interest on the debts he already owed. It was a Ponzi scheme built on holly and ivy. Diana, I said, he was going to sell tickets to my house, pocket the money through his consulting firm, and stick me with the cleanup and the liability. Diana added, if someone slipped on your ice, if the foundation got audited, you are listed as the host and key benefactor. You would be in the blast radius. I felt a wave of nausea. It was so calculated. He had planned this for months. While I was sanding my floors, he was planning how to sell tickets to stand on them. What do we do? I asked. We blow it up, Diana said. We blow it all up, but we do it legally. While Diana and I were dissecting the financial corpse of my father's scheme, the family dynamic in Cedar Hollow was disintegrating. I received updates in a steady stream of texts from Mallory and Evan. The relatives had splintered into 3 distinct camps. Camp 1 was the Loyalists. This included Aunt Linda and a few of the older cousins who still believed the sun rose and set on Raymond's command. They were currently gathered in the lobby of the Marriott in Briar Glen, drinking overpriced coffee and loudly complaining about my selfishness. They were feeding Raymond's narrative that I was mentally unstable and cruel. Camp 2 was the Realists. This was Trina, Cousin Mike, and the younger generation. They were angry, not at me, necessarily, but at the situation. They were out money. They were cold. They were realizing that the free vacation they were promised was actually a very expensive hassle. They were looking at Raymond with suspicion, wondering why a millionaire couldn't produce a credit card to cover a hotel deposit. Camp 3 was the quiet dissenters. This was Uncle Steve, Aunt Lenora, and Evan. They knew. They weren't saying much, but their silence was heavy. Around noon, the tension finally snapped. Mallory sent me a voice memo. You need to hear this. Her text said, I was sitting 2 tables away in the hotel restaurant. Evan finally lost it. I pressed play. The audio was clattery. Dishes hitting tables, the murmur of conversation. Then, Raymond's voice cut through, loud and booming. So I am thinking we just move the dinner to the hotel ballroom. I will speak to the manager. I am sure they can accommodate us if I explain who I am. Then, Evan's voice, quiet, shaking. Dad, stop. Excuse me? Raymond asked. Stop trying to fix it. Evan said. You can't afford the ballroom. You couldn't even afford the deposit for the rooms. Uncle Steve had to put it on his visa. That is a temporary liquidity issue, Raymond shouted. My funds are tied up in the trust. There is no trust, Evan yelled. The restaurant noise in the background died down instantly. There is no trust. Dad, there is no big announcement. You lied to everyone. You told us Gabriella begged to host. You told us she was dying to have us. She was. Raymond insisted. She is just having an episode. She isn't having an episode, Evan said. She is hiding. Because you won't leave her alone. You promised me you asked her. You looked me in the eye and said, Gabriella is on board. There was a silence on the recording, a heavy, suffocating silence. Then Raymond spoke. His voice was lower, colder, a voice I had heard 1,000 times when I tried to assert a boundary. I don't ask my own daughter. Evan, I tell her. That is how family works. She has a duty. She has that house because I raised her to have taste, because I gave her the confidence to buy it. It belongs to the family. I don't need to ask permission to use what I created. I don't ask my own daughter. The words hung there, naked and ugly. He didn't see me as a person. He saw me as an extension of his own will, a limb that had stopped obeying orders. Then I heard the sound of a chair scraping back. You didn't create her, Evan said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. And you didn't buy that house. She did, and right now, I think she hates you, and I don't blame her. The recording ended with the sound of footsteps walking away. I sat in the cottage, the phone warm in my hand. I replayed that line. I don't ask my own daughter. It was the closure I didn't know I needed. It was the proof that no amount of explaining, no amount of begging, No amount of logical argument would ever have worked. You cannot reason with someone who believes they own you. I felt a sob build in my chest. It wasn't a sob of despair. It was the release of a pressure valve that had been held down for 33 years. I let myself cry. I curled up in the armchair and wept for the father I wanted, and the father I had. I wept for the little girl in the photo, who thought the carnival ride was magic, not knowing her dad had probably stiffed the ticket operator. I cried for 10 minutes. Then, my phone buzzed. It was Mallory. Mallory, I am with Evan. He is shaking, but he is okay. We are going for a walk. Me. I heard the recording. Mallory. Good. Then you know. Me. I feel like I am destroying the family. Mal. They are all fighting. Aunt Lenora is crying. Evan is wrecking his relationship with Dad. Mallory. Stop. Mallory. Stop that right now. You are not destroying the family. The family was built on a foundation of lies. All you did was open a window and let the wind blow it down. Me. I left them there. Mallory. You are not abandoning them. Gabriella. You are refusing to enable them. There is a difference. If you had stayed, you would have fixed it. You would have paid for the hotel. You would have cooked the dinner, and Raymond would have learned nothing. He would have done it again next year. You are teaching them the most painful lesson of their lives. Actions have consequences. I stared at the words, refusing to enable them. I wiped my face. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, but I looked solid. I went back to my laptop. It was time to fire the cannons. I opened the email drafts Diana had prepared. Document 1. Notice of Revocation of Authorization. Recipient. Town of Cedar Hollow, Event Planning Board. CC. Raymond Price. I attached the signed affidavit stating I had never consented to the event. Document 2. Cease and desist and fraud alert. Recipient. Northcrest Lending Services. Fraud Department. In this email, I attached the credit report inquiry and a formal statement that I was the sole owner of the property at 14 Maple Drive, that I was not seeking any financing, and that any application submitted in my name or using my property as collateral was fraudulent. Document 3. Demand for removal and retraction. Recipient. Hearthlight Family Foundation Board of Directors. CC. Internal Revenue Service. Exempt Organizations Division. This was the nuclear option. The email outlined the unauthorized use of my name and property for fundraising. It also politely noted the irregularities regarding price bridge strategies and requested immediate removal of my name from all donor lists, under threat of reporting them for tax fraud. I sat with my finger hovering over the mouse. Once I sent these, there was no going back. This wasn't just locking a door. This was torching his reputation. This was legal warfare. But then I thought of Lenora. I thought of her losing her savings. I thought of her shame. I thought of Evan, being pressured to put $5,000 on a credit card he couldn't pay off. I wasn't doing this to hurt Raymond. I was doing this to protect everyone else. I clicked send, send, send. The emails whooshed away. The reaction was almost immediate. Within an hour, my phone pinged with an automated alert from my credit monitoring service. Alert. Fraud statement. Added to credit file. Alert. New inquiry from Northcrest Lending flagged as suspicious. Northcrest had received the email. They had frozen the application. If Raymond walked into a bank tomorrow, he wouldn't be greeted with coffee and a handshake. He would be greeted by a risk manager asking for his ID. The loan was dead. 2 hours later, I got a notification from the Cedar Hollow Community Facebook page. I hadn't posted anything, but I had alerts set for my street name. It wasn't an official post. It was a rant from Cousin Trina. She had posted a status update, tagged at the Marriott Briar Glen. Trina Holbeck is feeling annoyed. Can't believe how selfish some people can be. You travel hundreds of miles for family, expecting a warm welcome, and instead you get locked doors and zero communication. Some people are just ungrateful hosts who don't care about anyone but themselves. Christmas ruined family drama. She didn't name me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I watched the post, expecting a flood of sympathy for her, but something else happened. The comments started to roll in. Comment from Sarah Jenkins, my high school art teacher. Wait, are you talking about Gabriella Price? Trina. I'm not naming names, but yes. Comment from Mrs. Higgins from the town hall. Actually, honey, you might want to check your facts. Gabriella wasn't the one who submitted a fraudulent application to the town. Her father forged her signature. We had to pull the permit today. My jaw dropped. Mrs. Higgins, the mild-mannered clerk, had entered the chat. Comment from Mike Vance, a local contractor. Is Ray Price in town? Tell him he still owes me $1,500 for the deck repair on his old house from 4 years ago. If he's staying at the Marriott, maybe I'll swing by. Comment from Susan Miller, Aunt Lenora's friend. Ungrateful? Gabriella has been paying for that family for a decade. Leave her alone. Trina. She's finally standing up for herself. The tide wasn't just turning, it was a tsunami. Trina's post, intended to shame me, had become a public forum for Raymond's creditors and victims. The veneer of the perfect Price family was being stripped away in real time. In the comment section of a Facebook post, I refreshed the page. Trina had deleted the post, but screenshots live forever. Mallory sent me one a minute later with the caption, Mrs. Higgins is my new hero. I sat back in the chair. It was done. The legal notices were sent. The town knew. The bank knew. The family knew. Raymond had tried to use the pressure of Christmas to force me into submission, counting on the fact that I would never cause a scene. He forgot that winter storms don't cause scenes. They just change the landscape. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long, cold shadows across the rocks. I was alone. I was the villain in my father's story. But for the first time in 33 years, I was the hero in my own. And the best part? I hadn't said a word. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't fought. I had just stepped out of the way and let gravity do the rest. But I knew Raymond wasn't done. A narcissist without a supply is a desperate creature. He had one move left. He would try to corner me. He would try to force a confrontation where he could use his physical presence, his voice, his rage to cower me back into submission. He would come looking for me. And thanks to the undeniable connection between my house and my job opportunity that I had hinted at in my auto-reply email, a little breadcrumb I had planted, he might just figure out I wasn't in Cedar Hollow. Let him come. I wasn't the same woman who left Massachusetts 3 days ago. That woman was afraid of being rude. This woman was only afraid of going back. The drive back to Cedar Hollow on Christmas Eve felt less like a homecoming and more like a reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines. I had spent 3 days in the silence of Maine, watching the digital ghost of my father haunt my driveway through a phone screen. But returning to the physical reality of the house was a different weight entirely. The sky was a heavy, leaden gray, threatening snow that hadn't yet fallen, and the air was sharp enough to cut. I didn't park in my driveway. I couldn't risk it. If Raymond or one of the flying monkeys saw my car, the siege would restart before I even unlocked the door. Instead, I parked my rental sedan a block away, behind a row of hedges that bordered the community park. I pulled my scarf up over my nose, bowed my head against the wind, and walked the rest of the way. My street was quiet. Most of the houses were glowing with warm, yellow light, Christmas trees visible through front windows, silhouettes of families moving inside. It was the picture of suburban peace that my father had tried so desperately to co-opt. When I reached my house, it stood dark and cold. But it wasn't empty. I stopped at the edge of the lawn, staring at the porch. It was covered in boxes. While I had been in Maine, the postal service and delivery trucks had continued their relentless march. The relatives, assuming my house was the designated command center for the holiday, had shipped their gifts here. There were boxes with Amazon logos, priority mail packages from aunts in Florida, and festive gift baskets wrapped in cellophane that was now crinkled and damp from the morning frost. My front porch had been turned into a mailroom. They had treated my home as a drop-shipping warehouse for their celebration. I walked up the steps, my boots crunching on the grit, The sheer volume of it was staggering. I saw a label on a large box addressed to the Price family, CAO Gabriella Price. Another read, "For Cousin Trina. Keep frozen." That one was leaking a slow, dark puddle onto my porch floorboards. I stepped over the leaking box and reached the door. The evidence of the lockout was still there, preserved like artifacts at a crime scene. Taped to the glass of the storm door was a series of neon yellow sticky notes. They were written in my father's sharp, jagged handwriting. "Call locksmith immediately. Key sticking. Check back door. G. Call me now." To the left of the door, taped to the bay window with blue painter's tape, where did he even get painter's tape, was a piece of printer paper. It was a seating chart. He had taped it up, presumably in a fit of manic demonstration to show the doubting relatives that he did have a plan. I leaned in to look at it. Head of table, Raymond. Right hand, Cal Weller. Hearthlight. Left hand, Lenora. Kitchen service, Gabriella. I stared at the words, kitchen service. He hadn't even given me a seat at the table. In his diagram of the perfect Christmas, I was listed in the kitchen, presumably managing the courses while he entertained the guest of honor, Cal Weller. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the weather. I looked down at the welcome mat. Lying half buried under a stack of packages was a white 3-ring binder. It must have been dropped in the chaos of their retreat, or perhaps thrown. I picked it up. The cover insert read, "Operation Perfect Christmas, Logistics and Run of Show." I unlocked the door, the new lock turning smoothly, a silent testament to my rebellion, and stepped inside. I dragged the nearest boxes in with me, not out of kindness, but because I didn't want to give anyone an excuse to come back and claim them while I was there. The house smelled of cold air and stale silence. I hadn't left the heat on high, and the chill had seeped into the walls. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to signal my presence. I walked to the kitchen, illuminated only by the street lamp outside, and set the binder on the counter. I opened it. It wasn't just a plan. It was a script. My father had written out a schedule for the 3 days. December 24th, 4 o'clock. Arrival of caterers. Gabriella to supervise. December 24th, 6 o'clock. Cocktail hour. Raymond to give toast regarding foundation goals. December 25th, 10 o'clock. Brunch. Gabriella to prepare quiche and mimosas. Note: ensure Gabriella wears something appropriate for photos. No jeans. I flipped through the pages. There were budget breakdowns that listed host contribution as in kind, meaning free. There were lists of talking points for him to use with potential donors. He had scripted my slavery. He had directed my exhaustion. I closed the binder. I felt sick, but also vindicated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was the prop in a play I had never auditioned for. A headlight sweep flashed across the kitchen wall. I froze. I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. A car had pulled into the driveway. It wasn't the Mercedes. It was a battered Honda Civic. Evan. I watched him get out. He looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His shoulders were slumped, his hands jammed deep into his coat pockets. He walked up to the porch, looked at the remaining pile of boxes, and shook his head. He knocked. A soft, tentative rap. I unlocked the door and opened it. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Hey," I said, "come in." He stepped inside, and I locked the door behind him. He didn't take off his coat. He just leaned against the wall of the mudroom and slid down until he was sitting on the floor, his knees drawn up. I sat down opposite him, on the cold tile. "Is he here?" Evan asked, looking toward the living room. "No," I said, "just me and the ghosts." Evan let out a short, dry laugh. "God, it is a disaster, Gab, a total disaster." "Where are they?" I asked. "They are at a rental in Briar Glen," he said. "A big, drafty farmhouse that Raymond found on Craigslist at the last minute. It smells like mothballs and the heating is spotty. Half the cousins went home. Trina left this morning. She said she would rather spend Christmas at a gas station than with Dad right now." "And Dad?" "He is spiraling," Evan said. "He is in full victim mode. He is telling anyone who will listen that you had a mental break. He says you were overwhelmed by the pressure of your career and you lashed out. He is trying to get sympathy. He even set up a crisis fund jar on the kitchen counter at the rental to help cover the deposit, since he forgot his checkbook. I felt a flash of anger. But it was dull, distant. Of course he did. Did anyone put money in it? I asked. Evan looked at me. Aunt Lenora put in $20. Because she is afraid of him. Everyone else just looked at it. He rubbed his face with his hands. He asked me for money again this morning. Evan whispered. He woke me up at 6. He came into my room and sat on the bed. He said he needed $2,000 to grease the wheels with the caterer, or the Christmas dinner would be canceled. What did you say? I told him I didn't have it, Evan said. I lied. I have it, but I told him I was broke, and the way he looked at me, it was like I was a broken appliance. He just got up and walked out. We sat in silence for a long moment. The house creaked around us. I am sorry, Evan said suddenly. For what? For leaving you alone with him for so long. He said, I moved to Chicago. I got away. I assumed you were handling him because, I don't know. I told myself you were good at it. I told myself you liked being the responsible one. You always had everything organized. The house, the job, the plans. It was easier for me to believe you were happy than to admit you were drowning. I looked at my brother. I saw the guilt eating him alive. I didn't like it. Evan, I said softly, I was never happy. Then why did you do it? He asked. Why did you pay for everything? Why did you let him talk to you like that for years? I thought about the answer. I thought about the fear that had been planted in me since I was a child. The fear that if I wasn't useful, I wasn't lovable. I confused survival with love. I said, I thought that if I solved his problems, he would finally see me. I thought that if I bought the plane tickets and cooked the meals and signed the checks, eventually he would look at me and say, Thank you, Gabriella. You are good. I took a breath, but he never did. He just asked for more, and I realized this week, he doesn't love the person who helps him. He loves the help. Evan nodded slowly, tears shining in his eyes. He loves the help. He repeated, That is it. That is exactly it. He reached across the space between us and squeezed my hand. I am done. Gab, I am not giving him another dime. I am not covering for him. Good, I said. A knock at the door made us both jump. I checked the camera feed on my phone. It was Aunt Lenora. She was holding a red tin. I opened the door. Lenora stood there, wrapped in a coat that looked too big for her. Her face was pale, her lipstick applied a little crookedly. Gabriella, she said, her voice trembling. I saw Evan's car. I hoped you were here. Come in. Lenora, I said. She stepped into the mudroom and looked around nervously, as if Raymond might jump out of a closet. She held out the tin. I made rugelach, she said. It is silly, I know, with everything going on, but I didn't know what else to do. Thank you, I said, taking the tin. It felt warm. She looked at Evan, then at me. I am not staying, she said. I have to get back before he notices I'm gone. He is in a mood. He is pacing the floor, talking to lawyers on the phone, or pretending to. She took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. I wanted to say something to you, Gabriella, face to face. You don't have to. I do, she interrupted. I failed you. When you were a little girl, and your mother left, I saw how Raymond was. I saw how he made you a little adult. I saw him putting his anxieties on you, and I didn't step in. Why? I asked. Because I was scared, she admitted. We are all scared of him. He has this way. He makes you feel like if you cross him, the whole world will fall apart. He is so loud, and I was weak. I let a child protect herself because I was too cowardly to protect her. She reached out and touched my cheek. Her hand was cold. You are stronger than all of us, she said. You are the only one who ever really said no, and I am so proud of you. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. He knows you are in town, she said quietly. How? I asked. Evan mentioned he was coming to check the house. She said, Raymond put two and two together. He thinks you are hiding in here. Sulking. He said he is coming over tonight. To bring you to your senses. Let him come, I said. Lenora nodded, looking terrified. Be careful, honey. He is desperate. She slipped out into the night. I locked the door again. The Rugelach tin sat on the bench. A small, domestic object in the middle of a war zone. Evan looked at me. He is coming here? Apparently. We should call the police. Evan said, Not yet. I said, I have one more card to play. My phone rang. It was Diana Sloan. Gabriella, she said, skipping the pleasantries. I have the forensic analysis on the Hearthlight pledge form. And? It is a trace, Diana said. A bad one. We overlaid it with a signature from a birthday card you sent your father 3 years ago. Don't ask how I got it. I have my ways. And it is a perfect match. He literally put a piece of paper over your old signature and traced it onto the pledge document. The pressure points are all wrong for a natural pen stroke. So it is forgery. I said, It is felony forgery, Diana corrected, and fraud. Gabriella, this is the nail in the coffin. If we file this with the police, he is looking at jail time. Not just a lawsuit. Prison. I held the phone tight. Prison. My father. In an orange jumpsuit. It seemed impossible and inevitable all at once. What do you want to do? Diana asked. I have the complaint drafted. I can file it with the district attorney in the morning. Hold it, I said. Just for a few hours. Gabriella. I need to look him in the eye. Diana. I need him to know that I know. Okay, she said reluctantly. But be careful. He is cornered. I hung up. My phone buzzed again immediately. This time, it was a text from a number I didn't have saved. But the context made it clear. Gabriella. This is Cal Weller. I think there has been a significant misunderstanding regarding the event logistics. Your father is very distressed. We are all family here. I would like to come by and talk calmly. We can avoid any unpleasantness with the authorities or the bank if we just sit down and work this out. I am sure we can find a solution that protects everyone's reputation. I stared at the screen. Protects everyone's reputation. That was the tell. He didn't care about my father. He cared about his foundation. He cared about the audit I had threatened. He was trying to bring me back into the fold, to silence me with a calm talk that would end with me signing a non-disclosure agreement and taking the blame. It felt like a hand closing around my throat. Talk calmly. That was the weapon of men like them. They used calmness to dismiss your anger. They used misunderstanding to cover their crimes. I looked at Evan. I am not hiding anymore. I said, What do you mean? Lenora said he's coming here. I said, But I'm not going to wait for him to bang on my door and make a scene on my porch. I am not going to let him turn my sanctuary into a battlefield again. I stood up. I am going to him, I said. Evan stood up too. Alarmed. You are going to the rental? To the farmhouse? Yes. Gab, that is crazy. There are 20 people there. He will gang up on you. He will spin it. No. I said, He won't, because I am bringing the truth. I picked up the binder, the perfect Christmas plan. I picked up the folder with the legal documents Diana had sent me, including the proof of the trace signature. This isn't about Christmas. Evan, I said, feeling a clarity so sharp it cut. It isn't about the money. It is about ownership. He thinks he owns me. He thinks he owns my time, my name, my house. He thinks my life is just inventory for his business. I put on my coat. I am going to walk into that room, and I'm going to take myself back. Evan looked at me for a long moment. Then he zipped up his jacket. I am driving, he said. We walked out to his car. The snow had finally started to fall, dusting the packages on the porch with white. The seating chart on the window flapped in the wind. As we drove toward Briar Glen, the silence in the car was heavy. I rehearsed what I would say. I didn't want to scream. Screaming was what Raymond wanted. It made me look emotional. I wanted to be cold. I wanted to be factual. I checked my phone one last time. I had the email from Diana. I had the text from Cal. I had the recording of him saying, "I don't ask my own daughter." I had everything I needed to burn the house down. But as we turned onto the dark, winding road leading to the rental farmhouse, I realized I wasn't going there to burn it down. I was going there to walk out of the fire. "Pull over here," I told Evan, 100 yards from the driveway. "Why?" "I want to walk in." I said, "I don't want to be blocked in." He parked. The farmhouse was lit up like a beacon. I could see shadows moving in the windows. I could hear music. Faint, muffled Christmas carols. It looked warm. It looked inviting. It looked like a lie. "Are you ready?" Evan asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I am doing it anyway." We walked up the long driveway, our breath steaming in the air. The snow was falling harder now, erasing our footprints as soon as we made them. I reached the front door. I didn't knock. I turned the handle. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open and stepped into the warmth, into the smell of pine and roasting meat and tension. The conversation in the living room died instantly. 20 faces turned to look at me. Raymond was standing by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked up, his eyes widening in shock, then narrowing into a predator's focus. "Gabriella," he boomed, putting on his mask of benevolent concern. I didn't smile. I didn't shrink. I stepped into the light, holding the binder that detailed my own exploitation, and I prepared to speak the single, clean truth that would end the Price family as we knew it. The farmhouse in Briar Glen was a sprawling, drafty Victorian that had seen better decades, let alone better days. It sat on a hill that caught the full force of the wind, the siding rattling with a rhythmic, skeletal clatter. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke, damp wool, and the distinct, cloying scent of pine air freshener trying to mask the odor of mildew. I stood in the foyer with Evan. Aunt Lenora had been waiting for us just inside the door, wringing her hands, her face pale against the dark collar of her coat. She didn't say anything as we entered. She simply moved to stand beside me, a silent sentinel finally choosing her post. We walked into the living room. The conversation, which had been a low, anxious murmur, died instantly. It was as if someone had cut the power to a stereo. There were 22 people in the room. They were scattered across mismatched sofas and folding chairs. Cousin Trina was scrolling on her phone in the corner, looking bored and resentful. Uncle Steve was nursing a beer, staring at the floor. Aunt Linda was knitting aggressively, the needles clicking like insect mandibles. And then there was Raymond. My father was standing by the stone fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel in a pose that was meant to look casual but screamed of tension. He was holding a tumbler of amber liquid. When he saw me, his eyes widened. For a split second, I saw the panic, the raw, animal fear of a man who knows the walls are closing in. But then, the mask slammed down. It was terrifying to watch. In the span of a heartbeat, his expression shifted from fear to relief, then to a performance of overwhelming paternal love. He set his glass down with a sharp clink and opened his arms wide. "Gabriella!" he boomed, his voice thick with emotion. "Oh, thank God." He started toward me, crossing the room with long, eager strides. He looked at the audience, the cousins, the aunts, making sure they were watching. "I have been worried sick," he declared, loud enough for the back row to hear. "We thought something terrible had happened. Look at you. You are freezing. Come here, sweetheart. Come here and let Dad warm you up." He reached for me. He was going to hug me. He was going to wrap his arms around me, physically claiming me, smothering my anger with his body, and whispering in my ear to play along while the family cooed at the reunion. He was going to turn my arrival into the final act of his redemption play. The prodigal daughter returns to the benevolent king. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply took one deliberate step back. Raymond lunged forward to bridge the gap. But I stepped back again. His arms closed on empty air. He stumbled slightly, his momentum carrying him into the empty space where I had been. He looked foolish, like a dancer whose partner had dropped him. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was the same volume I used to order coffee. But in the dead silence of that room, it sounded like a gunshot. Raymond froze. He looked at his empty hands, then up at my face. He laughed. A nervous, fractured sound. "Gabriella, don't be dramatic," he said, his smile straining at the edges. "Everyone is watching. We are all family here. I know you are upset. I know you have been under a lot of stress with work. But I am not under stress. Raymond," I said, cutting him off, "and I am not having an episode." I walked past him, moving to the center of the room. I placed the white binder, the perfect Christmas plan, on the scarred coffee table. Next to it, I placed the folder containing the legal documents. The relatives were watching me with a mixture of confusion and hunger. They sensed blood in the water, but they didn't know whose it was yet. I turned to face them. I didn't look at my father. I looked at Trina. I looked at Uncle Steve. I looked at the people who had called me selfish on Facebook 3 hours ago. "I want to be very clear," I said, keeping my voice even. "I did not invite you to my home." A ripple of murmurs went through the room. Aunt Linda stopped knitting. "I did not create a spreadsheet for sleeping arrangements." I continued. "I did not agree to host a dinner for 30 people, and I certainly did not agree to host a charity fundraiser for the Hearthlight Family Foundation." Raymond stepped forward, his face darkening. "Gabriella, that is enough. We can talk about this in private." "No," I said, turning to him. "You wanted an audience. Dad, you have been performing for them all week. Now it is my turn." I looked back at the family. "My father told you I was eager to host. He told you I was finally doing my part. The truth is, he didn't ask me. He informed me. And when I told him it was impossible, he decided to do it anyway. He decided to occupy my home whether I was there or not." Cousin Mike, sitting on the arm of the sofa, frowned. "But the email said you were the host. The invitation for the fundraiser listed you as the key benefactor." I reached into the folder and pulled out the email from Hearthlight. I held it up. "I never sent this." I said, "I never pledged money to Hearthlight. I never joined their committee. My name was added to this list without my knowledge." Trina sat up straighter. "So the fundraiser wasn't real?" "Oh, it was real." I said, "The request for money was very real. The ticket sales were real. But the venue? The Price family home? That was a lie. You were not invited to a Christmas party. You were invited to a staging area. You were props in a show designed to make Raymond Price look solvent enough to secure a loan." The room fractured. "Wait a minute," Uncle Steve said, standing up. "Alone?" Raymond moved fast. He tried to grab the folder from the table, but Evan stepped in front of him. Evan wasn't a big guy, but in that moment, he looked immovable. "Don't," Evan said. Raymond backed off, his hands shaking. "You are lying," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You are lying to hurt me. You are ungrateful, spiteful. I gave you everything. I gave you the confidence to buy that house. And this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in front of my brother?" I looked at him. I felt nothing. No fear, no guilt. Just a cold, clinical observation of a man disintegrating. "I have the credit report." "Raymond," I said. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a special effect. "Northcrest Lending Services," I said. "December 10th. You applied for a home equity line of credit. But you don't own a home, do you? So whose equity were you trying to leverage?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. "You forged my signature," I said. I picked up the affidavit from Diana Sloan. We had the documents analyzed. I told the room, the signature on the homeowner consent form for the town tour? It wasn't mine. It was a trace, a clumsy one. And the pledge to Hearthlight? Also forged. I looked at my father. "You tried to mortgage my future to pay for your past. You tried to steal the equity in the one thing I own because you burned through everything you had. And when I wouldn't cooperate, you decided to do it behind my back. You thought if you flooded the house with relatives, I would be too embarrassed to kick you out. You thought if you announced the fundraiser publicly, I would be too polite to cancel it." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "You banked on my silence, Dad. You bet everything on the idea that I would rather be used than be rude. I took a breath. You lost that bet. Raymond looked around the room. He was looking for an ally. He looked at Aunt Linda. He looked at his brother Steve. She is crazy, he yelled, his voice cracking. She is making this up. I never signed anything. This is elder abuse. She is trying to destroy my reputation because she is jealous. She has always been jealous of the family's success. Jealous? Trina asked, her voice sharp. Ray, you just asked Evan for gas money this morning. What success? Raymond wheeled on her. I am waiting on a transfer. The trust? There is no trust. Evan shouted from his spot by the table. Stop saying that. There is no trust. There is no legacy. There is no big announcement. It is just you. Dad, it is just you and a pile of debts. Raymond's face contorted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. He looked at Evan, then at me. You are disloyal, he spat. Both of you. Disloyal. Rotten children. I should have left you with your mother. I should have never wasted my time raising you. The cruelty of the words hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Then, a movement from the side of the room caught everyone's eye. Aunt Lenora stood up. Lenora was the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who baked cookies and smoothed over arguments. But now, she walked to the center of the room. She stood next to me. She took my hand. He did it to me, too, she said. Her voice was shaking, but it was audible. Raymond stared at her. Lenora, shut up. No, she said. I won't. Not anymore. She looked at the family. 20 years ago, she said. He told me he needed help. Just a bridge loan. He cried. He begged. He said it was for the kids. I co-signed a personal loan for $30,000. A collective gasp went through the room. Aunt Linda covered her mouth. He never paid it, Lenora said, tears streaming down her face. The bank garnished my wages. I lost my savings. I had to sell Mom's emerald ring. And he told me. He told me that if I ever told anyone, he would cut me off. He said the family would hate me for being stupid. She squeezed my hand. I let him do it because I was ashamed, she whispered, but I won't let him do it to Gabriella. Uncle Steve stood there, staring at his brother. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. $30,000? Steve asked quietly. Lenora, why didn't you tell me? Because he made me promise, she sobbed. Steve turned to Raymond. His face was hard, a stone wall. Is that true? Ray? Steve asked. Raymond sneered. Oh, please. That was a lifetime ago. She is confused. She misunderstood the terms. Get out. Steve said. Raymond blinked. What? I said get out. Steve repeated, his voice rising to a roar. You stole from your sister? You tried to steal from your daughter? Get out of this house. Raymond looked around. He saw the faces. He saw the disgust on Trina's face, the horror on Linda's, the pure, cold anger on Evan's. He had lost the room. He had lost the audience. He drew himself up, trying to summon the last shreds of his dignity. Fine, he said, adjusting his scarf. If you all want to side with the liars, fine. I don't need this. I have friends who respect me. Cal Weller respects me. Cal Weller is worried about a tax fraud investigation. I said calmly. He texted me an hour ago. He wants to cut a deal. Raymond froze. That was the final blow. The loss of his status connection. You are a viper, Raymond hissed at me. A cold, heartless viper. He walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob, waiting for someone to stop him, waiting for someone to beg him to stay. No one moved. The only sound was the wind rattling the windows. He opened the door and walked out into the snow. The door slammed shut, leaving a vacuum of silence behind him. For a long minute, nobody spoke. The absence of his energy was palpable. The air in the room seemed to clear, the pressure dropping instantly. Evan broke the silence. Dad, he said to the empty room, speaking to the ghost of the man who had just left. You didn't lose Christmas. You lost control. Uncle Steve sat down heavily on the sofa. He put his head in his hands. I am so sorry. Gabriella, he said, his voice muffled. I had no idea. I know. I said, he is very good at what he does. I walked over to the table and picked up the folder. I pulled out one final document. It was the formal notice Diana Sloane had drafted. I placed it in the center of the table. This is a legal notice, I said. It revokes any authorization for Raymond Price to use my name, my address, or my financial information. It also states that if he attempts to contact me or enter my property again, I will file for a restraining order. I looked at the cousins. I am sorry your holiday was ruined. I said sincerely, I know you spent money to come here. I know this isn't the Christmas you wanted. Trina looked at me. She looked tired. Her makeup smudged. It is not your fault. Gab, she said, we should have asked you. We shouldn't have just assumed the group chat was the whole story. I nodded. I have one more thing to say, I said. I looked at Evan. He nodded, giving me the strength to say it. I looked at the binder, the perfect Christmas plan, sitting on the table. It represented everything I had fought to save. The house, the history, the idea that if I just made things beautiful enough, I would be safe. But I realize now that safety didn't come from a building. It came from freedom. I am selling the house, I said. Aunt Lenora gasped. The house in Cedar Hollow? But you love that house. You restored it yourself. I did. I said, and I am proud of it, but I cannot live there anymore. I looked at the window, seeing my own reflection against the dark glass. That house is a weapon now. I said, he knows where it is. He knows the neighbors. He knows the locks. As long as I am there, he will feel entitled to it. He will see it as a monument to his own potential. I took a deep breath. I accepted a private offer this afternoon. I said, from a developer, it is a cash deal. Evan looked surprised. You did? Yes. I lied. Well, it wasn't a total lie. I had emailed a real estate investor friend of Mallory's that afternoon. The offer wasn't signed yet, but it would be, and I have accepted a new job. I continued. In Seattle. Seattle? Trina asked. That is on the other side of the country. Exactly. I said. The room was stunned. They looked at me as if I were a stranger. And in a way, I was. The Gabriella they knew. The one who stayed. The one who fixed things. The one who absorbed the impact. Was gone. What will you do? Uncle Steve asked. I'm going to start over. I said, somewhere he can't drive to in a day. Somewhere he doesn't have a key. I buttoned my coat. I picked up the legal folder. But I left the binder on the table. I left the perfect Christmas plan there for them to keep. I am going to go now, I said. Gabriella. Aunt Lenora said, stepping forward. Please, stay. Have dinner with us. We can order pizza. We can salvage this. I looked at the tin of rugelach she had given me earlier. I looked at Evan, who was looking at me with a mixture of sadness and pride. I can't. Lenora, I said gently, I need to be gone. I turned to Evan. Are you coming? Evan looked at the family. He looked at the shabby rental. He looked at the crisis fund jar on the counter. Yeah, he said. I am coming. We walked to the door. Wait, Trina called out. Gabriella. Merry Christmas. I paused. I looked back at them. A tableau of broken people trying to figure out how to be a family without their dictator. Merry Christmas, I said. We walked out into the cold night. The snow was falling heavily now, blanketing the world in white silence. The air was biting, but it felt clean. It felt sharp and real. We got into Evan's car. He started the engine. Seattle? He asked, glancing at me. I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in weeks. Maybe, I said, or maybe Austin, or maybe London. I haven't decided yet. Evan laughed. It was a good sound. You are terrifying. Gab, he said. I looked out the window as we drove away from the farmhouse, leaving the lights and the noise behind us. I thought about the house in Cedar Hollow, sitting dark and empty. I thought about the boxes on the porch. I thought about Raymond, driving alone in his Mercedes, telling himself a new story about how he was the victim. Let him have the story. I thought, I have the pen now. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness, exactly. It was lighter than that. It was the feeling of a tether snapping. It was the feeling of being untethered, unowned, and terrifyingly unclaimed. Drive, I said to Evan, and we did. We drove into the dark, into the quiet, into the wide open future. Thank you so much for reading this story of Gabriella's reclamation. It's a journey that I think many of us can relate to. The moment we realize that keeping the peace is costing us our own peace. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member during the holidays? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of dramatic justice and hard-won freedom, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. There are many more secrets to uncover. Until next time, protect your peace.